For an almost unimaginable amount of time, they were the masters of our planet. They walked where we walk now, they breathed our air, they absolutely ruled this world. And then, in what was basically a single catastrophic day, it was all over. So let's get into it. This is the incredible story of cosmic chance and global disaster, the day the dinosaurs died. First, you've got to wrap your head around the timescale here. We're not talking about a few thousand years or even a million. The dinosaurs were on top for 140 million years. I mean, from the gentle giants to the most terrifying predators you can imagine, they were, without a doubt, the most successful creatures this planet has ever seen. For all intents and purposes, they were the world. And that's the big question, isn't it? How does a dynasty that lasts for 140 million years just vanish? What could possibly be so powerful, so completely devastating, that it could wipe an entire era of life clean off the map? Well, it turns out the answer wasn't from Earth at all. It was written in the stars, long before anyone or anything knew it was coming. To really understand the end, we've got to rewind the clock. And I don't just mean to that final day. No, we have to go back millions of years before that, to a completely random, violent event happening out in the deep, quiet darkness of our solar system. Believe it or not, the fate of the dinosaurs was pretty much sealed about 100 million years before the impact. Way out in the asteroid belt, like 200 million miles away, two asteroids smashed into each other. And this collision knocked a massive 40-kilometer-wide chunk of rock right out of its orbit. It was set on a new path, a collision course with Earth that would take millions and millions of years to complete. And here's where you see just how random and, frankly, terrifying the universe can be. As this giant rock got closer, it zipped right past our moon. I mean, it was a near miss. A tiny little nudge in its path, a slightly different angle, and it could have slammed into the moon instead, and history would have been completely different. But, physics is physics. The asteroid flew by, and its target was now locked in. And so here we are, the final day, 65 million years ago. That long cosmic journey is finally over. For all the creatures down below, it's just another Tuesday. But up in the sky, silently at first, and then with incredible violence, death was on its way. The moment it hit Earth's atmosphere, that asteroid was moving at an unbelievable 70,000 kilometers an hour. The friction from that speed turned it into a blinding fireball, basically a second sun screaming across the sky. It crossed the entire Atlantic Ocean in just 4 minutes. Can you imagine? Just try to picture the sheer terror on the ground. The light from this thing was so bright it would have blinded anything that looked up. But you wouldn't have needed to see it to know something was wrong. You would have felt it. The pure, radiant heat could be felt on the surface, a horrible promise of the inferno that was about to be unleashed. And then, impact. The 2-trillion-ton projectile slams into the shallow waters of what we now call the Gulf of Mexico. The amount of energy released in that single instant is, well, it's almost impossible for our brains to even comprehend. To try and put it into perspective, the impact was more powerful than all of the world's nuclear weapons going off at once, times 1,000. It was literally 1 billion times stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. This was an explosion so massive, it changed the geology of our entire planet in a flash. The immediate scar it left is called the Chicxulub crater. We're talking about a hole in the ground 180 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep. Millions of tons of the Earth's crust, rock, metal, water, were just instantly vaporized and blasted straight up into space. But here's the thing. The impact itself wasn't the end of the story. It was just the trigger. What came next was a global chain reaction of pure destruction that would first set the entire planet on fire, and then plunge it into a long, cold, dark winter. You can see this terrifying domino effect right here. The impact created earthquakes so strong they'd be a magnitude 11 on the Richter scale, which in turn triggered massive tsunamis and set off volcanoes all over the world. The planet itself was literally ringing like a bell. But as all that debris was blasted into space, the worst was actually yet to come, from above. So all that rock and earth that got vaporized and shot into space, well, what goes up must come down, and just 40 minutes after the initial impact, it did. It came screaming back into the atmosphere as tiny beads of superheated glass and rock, turning the entire sky into a giant broiler and setting forests on fire all across the world. It was a true global firestorm. 90 minutes. That's all it took. Within 90 minutes of the impact, the surface temperature of the planet spiked to 200 degrees Celsius. It was like a planetary oven. For dinosaurs standing thousands of miles away from the crater, there was simply no escape. The very air you were breathing became deadly. And for any creature that somehow survived the heat, a new, colder kind of horror was just beginning. All the dust and soot from the impact and the global fires created this thick cloud miles deep that completely wrapped around the Earth. The sun just vanished. With no sunlight, photosynthesis stopped, plants died, and the entire global food chain collapsed from the bottom up. But, in every great ending, there's always a new beginning. The absolute cataclysm that brought the age of reptiles to a sudden, violent close, well, it created an opening. A once-in-a-billion-year opportunity for a very different kind of life to take its shot. The devastation was almost total. This chart says it all. An estimated 90% of all species on Earth were wiped out. Just think about that. 9 out of every 10 forms of life, gone. The planet was left a barren, nearly empty world. So who were the 10%? Who actually made it through this apocalypse? Well, the survivors were small. With the entire food web in ruins, the only creatures that had a chance were the little ones, things that weighed less than 30 kilograms, the ones that could burrow underground and get by on scraps. In this new world, being big, which was once a sign of dominance, had suddenly become a death sentence. And this right here, this captures one of the greatest turning points in the history of life on Earth. The end of a 140-million-year dynasty was the starting pistol for another. Because in the shadows of these fallen giants, a small, adaptable group of creatures crept out from their burrows into a brand new, empty world. And that group? That was the mammals, our ancestors. The dinosaurs' loss was, in a very real way, our gain. Their apocalyptic end cleared the stage for the rise of mammals, a path that eventually, after a very long time, led to us. And it leaves us with this really fascinating question to think about. How exactly did that happen? Well, that's a story for another time.